Hello, hello. Hi, how's it going? So, I want to keep up with today's news because there was so much flip flopping about this, it wasn't worth trying to cover over the weekend. Um, this is quite pathetic, actually. There was some unsureness whether or not, uh, like, whether or not Sleepy Dawn would send ICE agents to airports because the TSA isn't getting paid, and so airports are slowing down. Now I understand to a layperson, it's like, well, these are people who are funded to go and help, right? But it doesn't work like that. And it was a really stupid idea, and there was mixed reporting on whether or not that would even happen. Different outlets putting out different contradictory stories based on different claims from people, like all through the week. It's like, what is going on? So there was really no point in even commenting on it until today came, and we saw they did in fact send ICE agents to airports, which is stupid. Hi, Bricks. Hi everybody. So we're gonna take a look at that news. And then my girlfriend gave me advice on being a content creator, and that it's there's a whole like streamer culture thing, and it's worth like looking at what other creators are up to. And apparently NotSoErudite, who's like a nice person, we've had lunch with. She went on Tim Pool's podcast, and I've heard mixed things about it. So we're gonna watch that later, because I have thoughts on that. I think Tim Pool is a traitor to this country. So let's yeah. But first, Taco Trump is at it again. This is a weird thing. This war in Iran, no one knows why this war is happening. No one has even made it an honest attempt to sell the American people on the war. So for once, the entire nation has come together and knows this is a bad idea, like statistically. Uh, we don't want more wars in Iran. If you want to support the troops, don't send them to die in the Middle East for seemingly no clear goal whatsoever. It's not working out. At the time of recording, 13 American troops are dead, and there is like a tracker for how much this war costs. In 1 second, I'm going to pull that up. Found it. Okay. Yeah, this is Iran-cost-ticker.com. Since the U.S. strikes began, the war has cost approximately, probably more than this, um, $28 billion, $955 million, and it might hit $30 billion by the time we end this conversation. Who knows? It's getting up there pretty quick. It costs about $1 billion per day, so it'll be another day or so before it hits 30 billion. But this is all just an approximation based on what we know. It's a disaster of communication. Pete Hegseth, a known alcoholic and Fox News host, is the self-titled Secretary of War. So there's no support in him from like anyone. Um, whoop, quiet phone. So yeah, no one really knows what's going on. There's a ton of flip flopping. So the cause of war, we've been given several different explanations for at this point, all of which are inconsistent, most of which are lies. Like it's to destroy a nuclear program, which they already took credit for destroying. Yeah, this idle game sucks. Yeah. This is like basically the world's most expensive idle game, where we're just throwing money at defense contracts to get nothing out of it. But oil just keeps getting more expensive, and people just keep dying. So yeah, no, is there a 4chan post about how everything is going to go down for the next year or so? 4chan is not a reliable source because of the website design itself. I think design and media design, I have like a degree in media design, is super important in the modern age and has led to so many problems. There's one great book, I believe, called The Chaos Machine, about how things like Gamergate are inevitable given the fundamental design of the internet and social media. And certain website designs do play into this, because in the 90s there was a group of Silicon Valley-esque tech bros who blended like fantasy books, drugs and psychedelics, and like this bizarre image of technofuturism together. People like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel among them, and had sort of laid the groundwork for the modern internet. And so it's why it's so bad. 4chan is bad and fundamentally, like, inevitably a Nazi generating machine, because 4chan's anonymous, you can't even track posts to one user over time, blends an equal footing people who are joking, people who are evil, and people who are just honest to God schizophrenic. You cannot tell them apart. So it's prone to conspiracy all the time. So yeah, if you have a post from 4chan, we could definitely take a look at it at some point. But yeah, anything from 4chan needs to be taken with a grain of salt. Because there are like liars, people who are just evil, and people who are genuinely crazy. And they can't tell each other apart. Which gives legitimacy to bad people. So anyway, yeah, this is how much this stupid fucking war costs. And we get more flip-flopping, not only on the cause, but whether or not we won, we're going to win, we're losing, we need help, we don't need help, people are helping us, they're not helping us, it's over, it's not over. And once again, Taco Trump is changing course. And this is so infuriating. Like, you just want to rip your hair out. And I like pulling up articles and reading along articles for stuff like this, because it's so fast-moving and it's so inconsistent, and being able to hold people down to details is really, really, really important. So this is from March 22nd, 2026, yesterday at 7:32 p.m. At war with Iran, President Donald Trump is cycling through an increasingly desperate list of options as he searches for a solution to the crisis in the Strait of Hormuz. He has jumped from calls to secure the waterway through diplomatic means to lifting sanctions and now escalating to a direct threat against civilian infrastructure in the Islamic Republic. Jesus Christ. Trump and his allies insist they were always prepared for Iran to block the strait. Yet, the Republican president's erratic strategy has fueled criticism that he is grasping for answers after going to war without a clear exit plan. And that's the bizarre thing, right? Like, Trump does not have any kind of military background. Any kind of military background. And the person in charge of the Department of Defense is just an alcoholic who's also not like a military guy. I don't know if Pete Hicks has ever served, but it's not like his thing. He's not an expert in this. He's on Fox News. So there's not a lot of like expertise at the top. And this is a direct consequence. And this is what happens when you hire based on loyalty rather than expertise. It is actually for the best to hire people who might not even like you, who might be huge assholes if they know what they're talking about on their specific department, because you can trust them. This is chaos. There's no faith, there's no plan. You could ask 10 different people what this war is, what caused it, why we're there, how long it'll take, and what the exit plan is, and you will not get 10 consistent answers. And that is a problem. Like, it's not even a plan you can, like, judge as good or bad. And that's sort of the point. Because Dementia Don is a narcissist. And so there's a tendency, he's really good at marketing and messaging, he'll always punt things to 2 weeks later to like hide any specific plan that he can be held accountable for just by avoiding it and changing the subject. And that's the problem, right? If you like, you can't be breaking a promise if you never fully make a promise. So that's part of it. There's definitely a desire to change the subject away from the Epstein files. That's what most people believe this is, which makes sense. It looks like he wanted a distraction from the Epstein files, and then people in his inner circle, Marco Rubio among them, would have said, hey, let's just attack Iran. Israel says, hey, let's attack Iran. That's an out. That's someone giving you an excuse, an option for a thing to do, and so he took it. Because Donald Trump is also very, very old and set in his ways. He's not media savvy. He's like the type of person who would get catfished on an app these days. Like, he's a boomer. He does not know how to use like an email. He does not know what to trust. He's just gullible and naive. So Israel could easily bait someone like that into this war. And he's working on an old, outdated, set in his ways view of what war is. He's made several tweets over the past like 15, 20 years saying Obama's not popular, so he'll start a war in Iran. And he still seems to think that. In his head, it's still like the 2000s, or things work the same way, where if you do like a war in the Middle East, everyone will be super patriotic and on your side for it. Which just doesn't make sense. Because we've seen all those wars in the Middle East. They lasted decades. Lots of people who are brave. Like, I mean, as much as you can criticize the military, I think anyone who's willing to like go on the ground and like fight in a war, that's horrible. They go through horrible mental and physical trauma. They deserve help. Like, veterans are not treated well enough. I don't have any plans to debate him. I'm open to it if it's something we would disagree on. Yeah, but um, so like it just doesn't work. People are not on board with the war in Iran without like a narrative, without like a good reason to do it, because we know the cost, we know the human cost of it. It's just not worth it. Oil prices, we don't really need super cheap gas as much. Like compared to the 2000s, so much more stuff is online these days. There's less of a demand. When we're talking about like cost of living being high, the gas station matters. People still drive places, but like there's more alternative infrastructure now. So I don't know. Like it's weird, and the price of gas was like fine. It was like fine, you know. There was a big spike with the war in Ukraine because of Russian barbarism, but it was coming back down. It was like fine. Like there's no reason for this. There was no impetus for this, which leads everyone to conclude the only reason that stands up to scrutiny, the only time that like the only reason that like it defaults to is just Israel baited him into this and he fell for it. So like there's a frustration because setting clear expectations and fulfilling expectations is super important for anybody, and that's just not happened. It's not happened at all. So everyone's pissed on both sides. Inner circle, complete lay people who don't even read the news but go to fill up on gas. Yeah, Ubering. Yeah, lots of people like Uber and like stuff like that. And that's like that really does suck. That's like affecting the people who are not don't have a lot of like fuck around money. Yeah, so it's like this is only cause harm to the people who need help the most economically. It's not justified anything. It's not yielded cheaper oil. It's yielded more expensive oil. So what is this war about? Who is it for? Am I drinking Monster out of a straw? Yes, I am. Because I got a can of Monster and I realized I had lipstick on and I didn't want to mess up my lipstick. So here we are. Okay, we're seeing like now calls for escalation of war to civilian infrastructure, which gets big war crimey. He insists they're always prepared for Iran to block the straits, but there's not a solution to that problem. And that's a huge problem. The strait controls shipping. Like, Iran is self-aware and planned for a war they're able to fight. Like, Iran does not want to take on the United States military, like, two armies walking towards each other in a big open battlefield. Iran knows it's, like, outclassed just economically on that front. But Iran is just able to attack all kinds of industrial infrastructure that can cause so much harm that it's like every country is going to start begging the U.S. to stop. And as much as the U.S. claims to be winning and can just like destroy whatever it wants, pretty much, there's no signs of victory. This does not feel like winning. Go fill up your car with gas. Do you feel like you're winning? It's just really, really pathetic. Okay, so Senator Ed Markey from Massachusetts says Trump has no plans to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, so he is threatening to attack Iran's civil power plants. This would be a war crime. And it would be. Yeah, like there's already an attack on an elementary school based on old, outdated intel. It was a school of young girls and their staff. There's no point in any of this. And it's like, this is baffling. It's almost funny to talk about. Like, this is just nonsense. And I've not seen anyone who's on board with this. Like, especially in the way that I post and, like, purposely try to like, spread around a presence. I like getting an even conservative sometimes to talk to, and, like, see how they feel about things. Like, I'm not afraid. I think a lot of people, especially, like, more on the left, like, leftists can't stand even being in a room with a conservative. But, like, I'm just so unfazed at this point. Like, I don't mind, like, seeing a conservative and, like, talking about stuff because their brains work in very funny ways. And it's interesting to ask them questions and get, like, half answers usually. But there is no justification for any of this war. Because, yeah, it's not about fact or truth to them. And we'll get to this when we get to the Tim Pool thing, which is why I want to go over that today. Because, yeah, they know they're wrong about things. among like conservatives, especially like MAGA conservatives who are in a cult, they know they're wrong. It's not that they're not self-aware. It's not that they have no shame. It's that they do, and they try to reassure themselves by confidently saying the wrong thing on purpose to prove to themselves and each other like loyalty. They gaslight each other into it. It's really, really, really weird. It's like they think it's a sense of power or something, but it just if they're all in a room together with just themselves and no one else, they will double down on something stupid. And this war is a case of that happening at the highest level, which is why it's causing problems. And all kinds of other like foreign like government officials and diplomats, like the lady from Japan, like all of Europe, even people in the Middle East are like, what the hell is going on? And they can't get objective answers because no one on the U.S. side who's like trying to talk about this has incentive to like truth or like the good of the world. It really is that cynical. Like it's all just they're just trying to be suck ups to Trump and whatever he says and does, and they by showing off that loyalty for him and each other, it's making less sense to the outside world, and it's pissing everyone off. Let's see. Trump tried his hand at a diplomatic solution last weekend when he called for a new international coalition to send warships to the Strait. Allies turned him down. This is a problem too of diplomacy. When it comes to things like U.S. aid that was cut, and now this, and like the tariffs and stuff, the Republican Party has a terrible appreciation, like lack of appreciation for soft power. There's hard power, which is like troops and warships and warplanes and missiles and stuff. But there is also soft power, which is like diplomacy. It's building that good social credit where like people trust you, people owe you one, people are grateful to you, people build you back, will like pay you back for stuff or like owe you back. A big reason why trade is so important is if you're trading with a country, they literally get money. Like you build an industry and jobs domestically, and then you trade with them, and like you get money and other resources from them. Um, Even if like you're just selling to one country and then buying from another, like you gain from that personally, which creates an incentive against war. Because like why would you attack someone who's you're getting money from them, like you wouldn't. It's self-destructive behavior. And U.S. aid specifically, it are like lots of programs where we're, like it's helping people in need, like third world developing nations, and that's not even a trade deal. It's not necessarily like fair, like you're not necessarily getting back, but it's building a sense of like gratitude and loyalty, and they're seeing you as like, oh, you help us, you're the people who help us. That's like a good reputation to build, and it builds a positive like PR for the United States in other parts of the world. Um, yeah, so like the thing with like USAID is like not only does it save millions of lives, but it builds a like pro US attitudes, like for good reason, because like we're just helping them, sending them aid from people who need help in other parts of the world. And that means they're less likely to radicalize against the United States and start war. Like places who try to attack the U.S. historically, they hate the U.S. Um, Bringing back manufacturing, like so, it's really hard, right? The point of like a globalist kind of economic thing is that it's sort of min-maxing on the global scale, on the max zoomed out scale possible, where you have different countries like do what they're able. And a lot of leftists will be like, oh, it's exploitative because the trade deal is like unbalanced. But like that's the word exploitative is doing a lot of work there because they'll just like contract negotiation, and you should negotiate the best contract to the extent you're able. But even like manufacturing jobs going overseas allows them like at like very low wages to build up their economies locally, while in the U.S. we get the lowest possible prices for things, even immigration domestically. You have people working at lower wages. That means like the final output product has lower prices, and that means like so it's either you can pay everyone just a higher wage to do that job directly domestically, or you can like let other people do it for cheaper, but then the prices are cheaper. And it's just like a math problem of like, I could give you $10, but you have to spend $8 and everything. It means you're only up $2. Or you could, you know, pay someone like $8, but then the product only costs $3, and then you're up $5 instead of 2. Yeah, so manufacturing jobs specifically, I don't know why people are attached to. I think it's just a matter of like education and training. It hurts if people are qualified for certain jobs and those jobs go away. I have like a degree in like tech and design. Um, and with like tech and design, lots of those jobs are going away to India currently and to some AI outsourcing. Um, but the idea with globalism is like we're supposed to get other jobs and better jobs, and the costs will go down for things, which allows more economic freedom overall. So it's all just a matter of trade-offs, and you have to like do the math problem. If you look at any single part of like an economics system like that, it can look like it sucks. But the point is like you're doing trade-offs in some areas to get better gains other places. Um, Someone in TikTok chat who really wants attention is calling me a liar, saying we're overcharged on everything from every country. We're in a deficit. Okay, first of all, if you care about the federal deficit is up to, what is it, 39 trillion now, which is the highest it has ever been. Donald Trump specifically is responsible for over 25% of the entire national deficit. The last time the US did not have a deficit, had a surplus, was under Bill Clinton. And then George Bush blew it. And Obama tried to save it. And then Donald Trump blew it. And then Joe Biden tried to save it. And then Donald Trump blew it. Yeah, and you're not getting a better deal than free trade. You, as a person in the United States, are paying more for goods that are tariffed. Free trade is literally cheaper. You're not putting any charges on top of it. It allows for free trade allows for free competition. No, the Trump depression. That's true. The Dawn depression. So like, there's all this kind of trade and diplomacy stuff, but like currently on this big picture, circling back to the war, which is nonsense and more of an economic clusterfuck than anything because it doesn't have any sort of clear patriotism narrative going on whatsoever. Trump has spent a year alienating every ally, then asking them for military help in a situation he started, like so defensive pacts are not going to help. They're just not. Because they're defensive pacts. You don't want to like waste defensive resources like in case of emergency on acts of aggression. And so after alienating allies economically, then starting military harm that causes more economic harm with the whole oil trade and subsequent stock markets around the world, he's pissed everyone off and no one wants to help him. So this is only digging a hole, and a narcissist is not going to dig themselves out of this hole. And now we can see, yeah, the Treasury Department is trying to get a handle on soaring gas prices by lifting sanctions on some Iranian oil. And what's happened about this, because it's just dug this massive hole, the only way out are to like lift sanctions at this point, because it's called such a supply clusterfuck through the strait. So we've lifted sanctions on Russian oil, which has benefited Russia at the expense of America. It's helped an evil anti-American competitor. And now lifting sanctions on Iran is helping an evil anti-American competitor and helping them economically in a war we're fighting against them. So someone in chat says Iran was going to attack the US. That is a lie. Bud, Iran didn't attack Israel on October 7th. Those are the wrong Middle Eastern people, okay? That's, you really gotta think a little deeper than that. Oh my god. No, I'm sorry. You looked at the skin color and you blew your load a little early there. You have no clue what you're talking about. Yeah. So, yeah, in terms of big, beautiful bill, it's a big, bad bill. Everyone should just call it that. It's a big, bad bill. I mean, it spiked the deficit. It's led to all this. And now this is like layer 2 of economic insecurity, just dumped on top for no reason. And a narcissist is not going to get us out of this war. It's just not going to happen. Because there's like no plan to There's no exit plan. There's no entry plan, really. There's no plan before, during, or after. So there's this like constant panicking and spinning. Where are we now? An ultimatum to Iran. Trump's ultimatum, conveyed while he spent the weekend in Florida, carries a threat of remarkable aggression. And so we're seeing this trend here, where like this war is bad and everyone wants to back out of it because it's not helping anyone. There is now this like pressure to culturally sell this war to the rabid conservative base. It needs to be this image of strength, projecting strength and victory. Economically, everyone is telling him to just stop and drop it by any means. And so what happens is, during the week at different times, he's calling for aggression to appeal to the one side, to appeal to strength and this like sense of we're winning, this is worth it. Because either way, the sunk cost fallacy, right? Like either like this is a war, even stopping the war would stop the economic harm. At least it would take several years to write. But if you stop the war, it stops the harm. But then you're still left with the harm you've done so far. So this is like an inherently consequential thing. You can keep going, but that also increases the economic harm even more. So you have to pick one or the other. Neither looks good. In both cases, you've done something wrong and you've caused harm, and you have to own up to it, which is why Trump keeps flip-flopping, and he's trying to appeal to these different groups. So there are certain times of the week where he's calling for more war, and then certain times of the week where he's calling for peace when the previous thing doesn't work. Iran is not really peace negotiating anymore because Iran has been existentially threatened. Because these calls keep flip-flopping, there's no guarantee, even if they agreed to peace, they would get peace. And also, all these attacks started and happened because of getting them to negotiate. And then when they got together to negotiate, then bombs were dropped on them. Which is a hell of an incentive against getting together for a peace meeting. And the other thing he's responding to, trying to bounce back and forth between pleasing people caring about economics and caring about victory, is he's just trying to manipulate the market, really. It's market manipulation. Like, he'll say something or make a big promise, like over the weekend before the markets open on Monday, because he's trying to get the cost of oil back down. And it's not really working. The White House has already faced intense backlash after the U.S. was blamed for missile strike on an Iranian elementary school. True. And I'm sorry, there's not like any clear singular thesis to this. It's just a baffling ongoing situation. And every day the news stories change. Are you pushing towards peace? Or are you pushing back towards war? Either way, it's costing inexcusable amounts of money. Oh, we're almost up to $29 billion. Israel's ambassador to Washington cautioned against an all-out attack like the one Trump threatened. Interesting. He wants to leave everything in the country intact so that the people who come after this regime are going to be able to rebuild and reconstitute. I wonder if he's talking about Iranians or, like, Israeli occupation. Who knows anymore? Trump's threat could prove counterproductive if it's carried out. Iranian leaders said they would completely close the strait and retaliate against U.S. and Israeli infrastructure. Because of course. All right, let's see. Are there any more updates on the Iran war? Because this was like last night. As of last night, the article is, hey, he was going to, go all out on attacks. Oh, and today, okay, here's the latest update. It's another flip-flop. He's saying Iran wants to make a deal, but the Islamic Republic denies any talks. See, now he's trying to go for peace, but he's just lying and saying they want to go for peace because he's so stuck between a rock and a hard place of needing to look strong that he can't even say he wants a peace talk. He's just lying and saying they are. And they don't want peace talks anymore because, like, there's no reason to trust. There's no, like, equity in that idea. Okay. He extended his deadline for Iran to reopen the strait, saying the U.S. will hold off on striking power plants in the country for 5 days. Oh, a big tough guy. It's like when there's like a dogs barking at each other, like through a fence, and then you open like the gate and the fence. They can actually go fight each other if they want, and then they really quiet down. There's not actually a. What the hell? Taco. See, I want to start buying stocks. Like, I want to start buying stocks, because if I just buy Chevron stocks, it'll wiggle back and forth a lot, but it'll generally go up. I would assume. I'm not an expert on this stuff. It's not financial advice. Trump also held on the possibility of a resolution to the war, though Iranian officials denied there were negotiations. He later told reporters the U.S. envoys have been holding talks with a respected Iranian leader. They killed most of the leaders. What is going on? And it's like, this is why this is only really in the realm of casual conversations. Because it's foreign policy, which is always a clusterfuck. But what is going on here? Does anyone, like, know where we're at right now? Like, it's just gonna keep pinballing. Okay, Iran is estimated to have enough enriched uranium to make up to 9 nuclear weapons. Okay. Yeah, I don't know what to make of this right now. Egypt and Turkey are leading de-escalation efforts. For now, it appears they managed to avert an energy catastrophe. So I guess we'll see. 5 days, huh? We'll see if in 5 days, all of the civilian infrastructure and power plants get bombed by the United States, which would be a massive war crime. And that's where we're at. Threatening civilian war crimes on Maine. So next. Oh, do I ever like Eskimo talk? I'm using Streamlabs and I need a different setup for that. I need to like just stream through the TikTok thing. I definitely considered it though. I've definitely considered doing like a call-in stream. Mainly though, I'd want to like just like ask conservatives what the hell they're on about. Yeah. So, next thing. ICE officers have in fact gone to TSA checkpoints at Trump's direction, while long wait times at airports persist. So there's some backstory to this one. There has been a partial government shutdown for a while now, just for DHS, the Department of Homeland Security. The Department of Homeland Security, among other things, would fund ICE, but ICE is actually funded separately, so ICE can still go. But things like the TSA, like airport security, are not currently funded. So the people who are there, like on an individual level, I do feel bad for because they are just working without a paycheck. Of course, however, the TSA has not really done anything for security. It was meant to be like a temporary thing after 9/11, and it has not yielded any results. It's really just wasted a lot of time at airports. And I think it's absolutely worth considering, unironically, as crazy as it sounds, like the abolition of the TSA or like the vast restructuring of it, because it's not actually proven to work. You know, like if we started at the position of like, obviously, we want safety on airplanes. Are we treating real problems effectively, and are we allocating funds to things that are most effective? And I really don't think we are. I really don't think just getting like weird losers to sort of grope you when you're waiting in a long unnecessary line to get on an airplane is worth it. I just don't think it's worth it. Let's see. So because of this budgetary issue, DHS has not been funded. The TSA has gone unpaid. The Democrats have put forward several bills, like at least 7, offering to fund DHS, just conditioned on some basic common sense safety regulations to ICE, like They can't wear masks or hide their faces, and they need body cams. And all that does is mean, like, hey, if they're just abusing any powers, they can be held accountable. Like, that means, like, the court system can get their ass. If they do criminal shit. Which is fair. That is totally fair. Nothing to fear, nothing to hide, right? But, Republicans have refused, while continuing to blame Democrats, while literally Republicans keep voting down common sense bills to fund DHS. So they're just virtue signaling while airports get worse and worse and worse. There's also another airplane crash. So once again, I would like to remind you all, when Pete Buttigieg was the Department of Transportation Secretary, planes stayed in the air. Things are pretty fine. They even put in a cool rule where if your if flight got canceled, you got bumped off the seat or whatever, they owed you a refund. Which, can't believe that wasn't a rule already. But that's what, like, Democrats do with airports. This is what Republicans do with airports. So not only has TSA gone unfunded for weeks now, lines are exploding out of control. And now the Republican solution is to send ICE to do it. And here's, like, the problem with, like, Republicanism. As a party sense, not, like, as a form of government, because we do have a representative democracy. Republicans only know how to solve things with, like, this sense of violent aggression and authority being sent, like, we gotta be tougher on it. And it's just not the solution to every problem, not even close. It doesn't work. Like, it's not helped anything. It's the wrong tool for certain jobs, including this one. And so while they've let ICE into airports, they're not helping with airport security. They're not doing anything. ICE is not trained to, like, run the x-ray scanners. They're not. They're just loitering and threatening people. So now it still takes hours to get through the airport, but there's just these assholes ruining the vibe and just starting to assault people, it seems. Which is ridiculous. Like, they've done nothing. They can't even, like, do the job of TSA agents. So they're just standing there shadowing TSA agents. So not only, like, is the person there overworked and unable to do the job, there's now just, like, another guy standing there also in an already crowded airport. So this is what the government is spending money on. Those ICE agents are still getting a paycheck, by the way. Yeah, it's just normalizing a paramilitary at the airport. And one big reason for all this ICE nonsense is because, like, anyone who's in the actual military, this was a fear early on, like, from, like, inauguration on, like, the speculation of the military being, like, turned to martial law against the people of the United States. As flawed as the military is, and there are some troops who absolutely do awful stuff, like awful civilian war crimes, the troops do still take, like, an oath to uphold the Constitution. And there is, like, some actual organization and discipline there. And there are actually some people in the military who have been there for a long time to climb the ladder and stay there. The military is not, like, on a whim willing to just become a cult of personality arm and just flip out. And I think they realized this because very quickly, like, that kind of quieted down. And then they started funding ICE and giving ICE free reign to do whatever instead. Because ICE is not the military. I don't think they could just weaponize the military. So instead they've built this, like, paramilitary Gestapo force instead that is more unaccountable and more willing to do fascistic bidding. Like, this is the alternative. And I hope people see that, like, see what ICE actually is. Because they're doing random stuff here. This is not about immigration. This is not about safety. Like, this is not about anything. Anyone that, like, any naive person in good faith thinks ICE might be doing, they're not doing. And where did they get ICE so quickly? Where did they recruit them from? And the answer is, like, all of those little, like, weird racist white supremacist militias, like Proud Boys and stuff. Because they showed up even, like, with some of their own gear at first. And they already had, like, military gear. They already had weaponry. You know the kinds of groups that do that? They're, like, the little militias of white supremacists. And they just gave them authority to do stuff. So ICE is weird and is going to be used in increasingly creepy ways, including possibly trying to harass people on election day. Please show up and vote anyway for elections. no matter what, because it's very important. But yeah. And this is all because like the SAVE Act is a weird thing they're going for, which is just a voter suppression bill and also a transphobic bill. It is one of the worst bills ever, and like Republicans don't even have the votes for it. But like they just keep virtue signaling about that and refusing to do anything else, refusing to fund DHS. Just nonsense. So yeah, now not only if you go to the airport, is it just a chaotic system where sometimes planes crash and now you have to wait hours, and even the TSA employees are miserable and unpaid, and they're also wasting their whole day there, and it's awful for everyone. Now there's also ICE assholes who are basically just sanctioned domestic terrorists, doing literally nothing at all because they objectively don't know how to do anything at all. Democrats are continuing to demand major changes to federal immigration operations, including policy changes that would require ICE officers to get a warrant from a judge before forcefully entering homes. That is common sense. The removal of masks, that is common sense. And clear identifying information on uniforms, that is common sense. If they're following the law and they're doing everything right, this is totally fine. This is totally fine. This is just an accountability thing. And like it's a consistency that the radical right now is deeply allergic to accountability and responsibility. And that's something to keep an eye on, right? I know a lot of people think like, oh, Democrats are weak, they're not fighting a lot. But like Democrats are prioritizing things like this because they know this is such a clusterfuck of corruption. It will take years to like prosecute it all and chase down it all. But we do still have a legal system. We have laws, we have judges, we have lawyers. There are consequences for a lot of this like horrible stuff they're doing already. And so the point of why Democrats just want some accountability and want little changes like this isn't enough to just get the evidence to identify the right people, and then they can like go after these agents in court and then throw them in prison. Like they will get sentenced for assault and murder and trespassing. Like those parts of the system are already there, and like that's the thing. It's not that they're just getting away with it. It's like we have the whole system for that. The problem is getting the person into that system, and then the rest of the pipeline is there for like actions into consequences. But that's why like there's this major fight right now over being able to identify who's doing what. There's even like hearings, all of these Republican officials, even in the administration, are refusing to answer questions. They're waffling. They're like hiding stuff. They're redacting documents. They're just being very performative because if they give that information, they know they will be prosecuted, like for perjury. Like Kristi Noem is one of the few people who actually perjured herself, and then they did have to fire her, which is good. They moved her to another thing. They moved her out of power. So like I do want to give the Democrats some credit there. There is a system that's like trying to work, and it's just this like accountability, like just getting evidence, like pushing them in. That's the part where they're like holding one to the top of the water slide, refusing to go down. So like these sound like small changes, but the rest of the system is already there and like ready to bring down the hammer on them. Yeah. So like it's I don't know. It's common sense. It's common sense little stuff. And that's like the weird thing we're seeing about the whole American government system right now. Which parts of our system are actually a system, and which parts of it just require on like a person there to kind of like have a sense of the intent of what's supposed to go on, and then in good faith do their job. If people like do their jobs, then things kind of work. But there's several things where they're slippery and they're not hard obligated to do anything or hard held to anything, and that's like where people are slipping out. Fears that deployments will heighten tension. Yeah, some fear that the federal immigration officers at security checkpoints will only escalate tensions. True. Union leaders representing aviation workers stress that ICE officers don't have the same training and expertise as TSA workers. And the presence of federal immigration officers could also put some travelers on edge. Absolutely. Like, I don't want to go to an airport while any of this is going on. It's awful. Whether ICE will have a more sweeping role beyond watching long lines and patrolling terminals has yet to be seen. Then why send them? This is an intimidating virtue signal. That's all it is. And I wish more people would call out the right for virtue signaling, because they do it all the time in lack of any actual substantive policies. On Sunday, Trump said federal immigration officers can assist TSA by guarding exit lanes or checking passenger IDs. Why, though? Guarding from what? See, the point with the airport right now, like, the problem with it, is that too many people are standing around waiting, exhausted and tired, and they just want to get out of there faster. More security, more checkpoints adds to that wait. That does not, like, speed up the wait time. That does the opposite. They don't want that. They want streamlining. You can, like, find even, like, actual documents. The CIA has a great one on this of, like, how do you, like, sabotage an organization versus how do you, like, make it succeed. And I think a lot of people, even, like, unintentionally, can passively do the things that sabotage an organization or any operation, which is stuff like this, like jumping through more hoops, having more people double check things. There are mistakes, they have to redo stuff. More waiting and oversight slows everything down. Versus contrast that to, like, Silicon Valley, like, tech companies, where you have that ideology of move fast and break things, where just streamline, cut corners where you can, get things through, get things done. If the problem is, like, airports are too slow, take out some of those security checkpoints, honestly. Like, just wave people through. That's what you should do if that's the problem, right? But this is just adding more tension to an overloaded, overburdened system. And ICE agents have really puny emotional regulation systems. Like, they're infamous for just lashing out and attacking people. So throw them in there. I'm sure that'll be a good thing, right? So this just doesn't work. This doesn't help. This is just adding, like, stuffing more people into an overcrowded place. At least 7 bills Democrats have put forward to just fund airport security. But now they're just overworked and understaffed because Republicans won't vote for any of it. I've seen people talking about on social media waiting, like, up to even, like, 4 hours, like, arriving early for their flights and still missing their flights. And then what do you do if you miss your flight? You sit around there waiting for another one, which is going to cause more and more of a backlog? None of it makes sense. Jeez. 11.8% of TSA agents are missing work. The highest rate of the shutdown so far. Because, yeah, if they're not getting paid, they're just going to call out sick. Screw it. Why would they? Some have accused the government of using TSA workers as pawns. Absolutely. If you look at Twitter, like, all of the conservative sheeple bots are just, like, using the airport as a pawn thing. I don't know why also. Airports seem to be, I guess, like, a symbol, a token of middle class, how people are doing. Because even with, like, the last big shutdown, it wasn't like food stamps going out that caused the urgency to end the shutdown. It was as soon as it was about to hit airports, and that would bother, like, business class white people, that everyone was quick to act, which is deeply disappointing. I don't know. Yeah. So the airports, there's no solution in sight to this. Unions have called for TSA workers to be paid immediately. ICE officers are seeing paychecks. So now, like, these air traffic controllers are, like, and stuff, and the TSA workers, there are people at the airport showing up who are doing nothing and they're getting a paycheck, which is just adding insult to injury. I think that's just going to cause more people to drop out. Oh yeah, they want to privatize and deunionize the TSA. That makes sense. That makes sense. Wouldn't work. Ugh. What a joke. So I want to go over some comments in chat. Yeah, Wick's show. Yeah, I just, like, was hanging out one night and I saw Wick was streaming. So I pulled up, I was watching it, and I was just getting, like, deeply frustrated at a bunch of very nice liberals, who I'm sure are all fine people, like, you know, subscribe to them, like, and stuff. We're talking about how far should Democrats go? how far should liberals go in, I suppose, seeking revenge on the MAGA people after all this is done? And a lot of them feared using every lever available, like all of them. Revitaligo, if you're still here, could you be more specific about what my hypothetical was and what the rebuttal was? Because I forget exactly. But I was watching the stream and I was just getting like really frustrated, and yeah. So like I was getting really frustrated watching it because like they're all making the same like naive mistakes the Democratic Party has for a long time, and like made like just a really sad little comment of like mentioned like had some more people to represent different viewpoints, and they didn't show up, and it was just getting like all passive and they're all agreeing with each other while being wrong, and like that other side just didn't show up. And I said in chat because like someone else did too, like, I want to come on, and I was like, do you want someone to come on and like represent the scorched earth like angle, because I will. And they brought me on. I was like, cool. So yeah, I was like able to kind of get on there. So the problem with that, let me see if I can pull up MS Paint. I love MS Paint. Paint is great. We're gonna make it like a little diagram. We can even pull up the stream there if we want. Let's see. Browser, no, camera. Wait, no, browser. And then we'll pull up the MS Paint. Let's see. Window capture. Ha! There we go, we got it. Okay. So I am by trade like a designer. I like graphic design and game design and experience design. Like I went to like one of the top game design schools in the country. And then because I have a lung disease, that's why I cough sometimes in the stream. And like COVID happened, and I just had to go back home. And yeah, so yeah. So I really like game design, like game theory and stuff like that. I think that's super important, like the psychology of what people do and why. And it's like something that like attracts me to politics too, because it's the same kind of curiosity there. And so there's this like sort of pattern. Where there's like a band, right? There's a band of what we can do. Assume it's like this, like a big tube of like what we can do, right? And there's this current. And so we want to push left, like, and within that band of like, here's what's legally possible, right? Like here's what's legal. That's like this black tube. Then there's like another limit within, which is doing like a lighter gray. Of we'll start at this top. We'll say they show the same top, so it's like easy to draw. And then there's like a realm of what's probably what's known, like what's considered. Because there could be some situations based on old, like, dusty, archaic rules that, like, you know, there's the implications no one's considered before, no one's used before. And then there's, let's see, like another, yeah, I'll do like a light beige. And then there's like another threshold higher up. Ah, there's my mouse. Of like, this is what's, like, we'll say what's cool to do, but cool in like a polite, respectable, normal, you know, is what's cool to do, or it's just like nice or respectable or normal. So here's what happens. Democrats and normal people, and even like some old school Republicans, will push back through this channel. We'll prosecute crimes in like a normal way and do everything right. Now, here's what Republicans have been doing, especially under Trump. They look outside just this, right? It's like a big tube. We're like pushing like water back and forth through it. So like we're making some momentum this way. They're just like, here's what's normal. Here's what you're supposed to do. There is a band of stuff that is, so they'll also do the same. They'll do that also. There is a band of stuff that is known as like a thing you can do, but it's like not normal. It's not polite. It's seen as punitive. It's seen as too far. It's seen as too much. It's seen as like, frankly, a dick move. And there's a few examples of this. Jaywalking. Jaywalking is technically not allowed. Like, it's technically illegal in lots of city ordinances, right? I don't know what the penalty for jaywalking would be. Maybe like, small fine or something. But like, no one's actually gonna go after you for jaywalking, right? It's like too small, it's too petty, it's not worth it, and it's like a reasonable thing. Like, you could understand why someone would jaywalk. So he's like, you're not gonna prosecute someone for jaywalking, but you technically could. And yeah, there's a letter of the law and the spirit of the law. Yeah. But even in the spirit of the law, like, there's some stuff that's just like, it's just a dick move, right? It's like, and so Republicans like find this too because they want to win systemically and destroy any opposition. And the mistake people kept making in that like panel, like big panel, was people were saying lots of things like, oh, it's about like you want to punish Republicans and teach them a lesson. I don't care about that. They already know what they're doing is wrong. It's not some like more like, oh, now I see the error of my ways. No, it's about like, if they are in prison, they are not able to keep actively manipulating the political system. It's removing them from the board. Like, get as many of them out of the way as you can because they are bad actors. Yeah, like, they act outside of norms at every opportunity. And even if there's more of them, do that anyway. And also, like, frankly, if I want to like prove a lesson to anyone, I want to prove to liberals and normal people that our laws actually mean something. There's a huge trust issue among the American electorate, especially among the American left, that like we can't trust our government, we can't trust our politicians. And that's because like there's no trust in any of the laws because they just see laws and rules and norms seem to be violated all the time. There's no, like, when anyone makes a promise, even when anyone else makes a promise, it doesn't happen because like their efforts get sabotaged by the right. They don't feel like there's a return on that investment, so there's no trust in the words. It doesn't pay off. If there's a lesson to be taught here, it's not to punish the Republicans, it's to show the left that when we say something is a rule, it means something. We're going to actually enforce it. Yeah, so like Republicans will also do this. If they could find a Democrat who's jaywalking, and they could technically prosecute them for that, they would, because they know that gets a Democrat out of the way. It doesn't teach Democrats a lesson about respecting jaywalking, but just stuff like that. Like Al Capone, they got on tax evasion. It wasn't to teach him a lesson on tax evasion, and it's really because he did other awful stuff. But they're being really wily about that other stuff. But they could get him on this. Donald Trump raped children. They're going to drag that out and make that as hard to prosecute as possible for the rest of his life. But if they could get him on anything else, good. Like, I'm being goal-oriented here. So, honestly, I support the stance. If Democrats can find a Republican jaywalking and that's against the rule, get them. Get them. Not because it's going to teach anyone a lesson, because of approval rating, but because you can. Then there's other stuff, too, which Republicans actively seek out. They try to find, and have been doing in the administration, because they're like very punitive on purpose, like any dusty old weird excuse or interpretation of anything, constitution or otherwise, to achieve any goal by any means necessary. If they could like misinterpret things on purpose in a way that they could technically find some basis for, that like, oh, you can run for more than 2 terms as president, they'll do it. And like the problem that like Hutch especially kept going is like, the sense of oh, that's corrupt, that's wrong, that's bad. We don't want to show people that's good. And I'm not saying we want to show people that's good, but the problem is with this stuff especially, but no, we can extend it up to like this stuff especially, like also like the stuff that's not cool but is still technically allowed. As long as this is possible, Republicans will do it. Even if you get rid of these people, new ones will do it. And my goal is not to just do this also. My goal is to realize, like, game theory-wise, if something is possible but impolite, norms are not enough. Good faith is not enough. As we've seen with the Trump administration, there are several rules just, like, built on, like, the sense of faith that someone will get into a role and just not enforce a rule to get away with something. Or they will start enforcing a rule to get away with something. And it's just this possibility. Like, it's just... oh, it's like some like principle. I forget what it's called. Like Murphy's Law, I think, but that could be the wrong one. What can happen will happen. And as long as this is technically possible, you're going to see more instances of this corruption. Like they're going to keep hitting this and doing this stuff. And I don't want any of this to happen ever. Like I don't want to say do this also. I want to say no one should do this. And if we just like don't touch these rules and just say it's polite, we're going to set a better standard and hold ourselves to a higher standard, which is what that other person said. What was the name? Someone said in chat. Sorry, I'm deeply forgetful. Something wolf, right? Stormwolf, yeah. Yeah, the sense of like, oh, if we do that, like we're teaching them to like they should do it also. They're already doing it. We don't want to like set a standard of it's not like we want to be better and set a better standard. It's then people learn, oh yeah, that's how we do it normally and fairly. They're not hearing you out. Because the problem is there's not even like a fair, unbiased media source to hear any of this stuff. There just isn't. The problem is everyone is only hearing stuff through, yeah, Murphy's Law. What can go wrong will go wrong. Yeah. Yeah. So like, there's no way for people to unbiased and like fairly give you a fair interpretation anymore. Like, because the problem is this sort of shotgun blast approach to media. Flood the zone. That's what Steve Bannon calls it. And the way that like our partisan media is set up, there is a mandate for like Republican media to just say Democrats bad 24/7, no matter what you do. Whether that's you are also exploiting all of the same loopholes and being borderline corrupt, I guess you could call it, as Hutch did, or even if you're just wearing a tan suit, they're going to be mad about as much stuff as much as you can for a full 24/7 anyway. So if they're going to be mad at you anyway and critical of you anyway, you may as well do what you can. You may as well do this stuff rather than do nothing, because it's equally going to be criticized and shot down, and like the public's going to be turned against you to the same extent regardless. I don't think you see any returns on good faith. I mean, that's because Biden tried to do that. Biden tried to play nice. Biden tried to play nice, and what did we have for it? Because the reporting on Biden and the Biden administration was still negative. Like there's no good faith return on that. But there is an effective mechanism in here, which is Republicans are selfish. And Republicans have already done this with a few things, right? When it comes to power and limitations on power, Republicans are fine maximizing power and minimizing limitations on power when it works in their favor. Only when it works in their favor. And one big example of this is the filibuster. The filibuster, to break a filibuster, requires more votes than it takes to pass a bill. The goal is to return to no, because you can't assume good faith. But the goal is to return to an era that leads to the results of good faith politics, right? So the goal of the filibuster takes more to override a filibuster. It takes more votes than it takes to pass a bill. Like it's a higher threshold. I forget if it's like 2/3 or something, but it's like to pass a bill you only need this much. To pass the filibuster, you need like this much, right? And when like every seat in government is split, like Congress is split about 50-50. So we'll do like a purple line, kind of around here anyway. Only the really good bills get passed at all. So even when there's like good democratic bills and ideas, we don't get them passed. You need to compromise and get stuff like other people on board to to jump this hurdle, because everything now gets filibustered by default. That's like how you do this kind of government lockout that Republicans figured out during the Obama years. Because it's impossible to current game theory wise. It's too like min-maxed. You can't like win enough seats to just do this on your own. It's like you would need like a miracle, like massive supermajority in Congress to do that. So, here's the thing. Should we end the silent filibuster? Should we just end the filibuster? Because if we end the filibuster, either party could actually get stuff passed that they want to pass. If like this is the only threshold you need to cross. There's some pros and cons to that. One, you get to do what you want. Like the party like can say, hey, we want to pass these bills and do these things. And they would just get to do that. They would have the votes to do that reasonably. Both Democrats in power and Republicans in power. I support this because this means Republicans with their bad ideas could do them, and then everyone would see the consequences and know they're bad. When Democrats pass their bills and their ideas, they're good and people like them. The problem is Democrats come in with good ideas. They don't have enough votes to override a filibuster. Republicans just refuse to vote on stuff and like lock them out. And then like there's nothing to show for Democratic leadership. So then it defaults back to Republican leadership. And then Democrats trying to be nice stop Republicans from doing what they want to do. And then people don't understand that Republicans are bad and then keep voting for Republicans. And that's why government has like done less and less over time, which has reduced public trust in government. With the SAVE Act, which is a voter suppression bill, And because it's a voter suppression bill specifically, I think it's bad. It just needs to be stopped no matter what. No, I'm not saying abusing the system back will disincentivize abuse in the future. I'm not saying that, okay? And that's what Hutch kept thinking because he was not thinking 2 steps ahead. Right now with the SAVE Act, Republicans don't have the votes for it. There is a faction in the Republican Party saying, hey guys, we're in charge of the Senate. We should just get rid of the filibuster so we can pass the SAVE Act. I still don't think they have the votes to do it. John Thune, who's the Senate Majority Leader, who's in charge of the Senate right now and is a Republican, is terrified of that and has refused, against all of their pushes, to abolish the filibuster. Because if they abolish the filibuster, then they lose in midterms, which they will. Then Democrats get to do whatever they want without a filibuster. And they, every single time, would rather stop Democrats from doing something than just doing it themselves, right? And this is the key. This is the key. Sorry. Yeah. This is the real key here, right? Because Republicans suddenly remember that corruption is bad, we need limits on power, only when they're worried Democrats could do it. I'm not saying to do this back and forth. I'm saying even abolishing the filibuster, which is good, Democrats could do more with it than Republicans could. And Republicans are terrified, more than anything, of letting the American people see honestly and fully what Democratic leadership unfettered could do. Like, liberal tyranny is just that, like, meme of the utopia with flying cars. Even neoliberals, who everyone thinks are cringe and lame and boo at. Like, neoliberals just want to create, like, a bike lane and a bus lane and have little food trucks along the street and plant several trees. And, like, you probably don't want to own a car, but there's really good public transportation. You know, it's expensive to have a car and to park it, you know. But it's like, yeah, it's kind of like, oh, that's no fun. Everyone just lives in, like, an apartment, but it's, like, super healthy and there's mixed zoning, you know. Like, even just, like, boring neoliberals in charge would create a society so vastly superior to what we have currently. Republicans, by any means, want to stop Democrats from getting whatever they want to do done. Like, whoosh, like, it's like magic. It's like awesome. It's poggers. Okay? Republicans would rather keep the filibuster and stop themselves than let Democrats do that. This is the key. And this works on everything as well. If you want to get rid of this, because I just want to get rid of this zone entirely. We need to get rid of this zone. If there's anything we agree, like, just critical thinking wise, is bad morally, logically, is just like an abuse of rules that should not happen, because that's, like, not the intent of the rule, or, like, it just leads to bad outcomes. Yeah, like, it's just, you know, we don't want this to happen anyway. Like, it's just bad. I agree, it's bad and we shouldn't do it. But if we just don't do it to be polite, to hold ourselves to a higher standard, like the they go low, we go high, as soon as Republicans get power again, inevitably, they will, in any capacity ever, they will start doing this again. I want to just ban this outright. I'm not saying abuse it also, be as bad as them. I'm saying, like, no, the only way we can guarantee this won't happen is if we just hard ban it and hard restrict it. And the only way you're going to do that is if you threaten to do it as a Democrat. Within the month, Republicans will sign on to a bipartisan effort, and then it will be bipartisan. Here's what you do, right? You have Super President Gavin Newsom threaten to say, hey, we're going to do this also. And if you don't do anything, I'm just going to start doing this. But also, here we have some friendly Congress people on the Democrat side who are going to say, hey guys, this is, like, bad, right? Like, obviously we don't want anyone to use this kind of power because we think systemically, we can think, like, no one should have this power because it'll be corrupt. We should say, hey, like, in the same month, at the end of the month, we're going to start doing this. But here's a bill to ban this and just ban this track outright on this issue. You can do this, like, on however many rules and abuses you find. So your options are sit back and let us do this. And even if the Republicans get into power eventually later and do the opposite again, they're less likely to do that because, like, people are going to see Democrats start using all their powers to the full extent capable, we'll see Democrats pulling on the levers. People do respond positively to Democrats doing stuff. The last time Democrats were able to do stuff was what, the Affordable Care Act. Like Biden passed a few like major bills on like infrastructure and microchips that were just like objectively awesome. Republicans don't want to see this because it's not like, oh, Democrats do this and then Republicans do this back and forth. It's once Democrats start to do this, there is no way back for Republicans, like democratically, as long as there's still democracy. It's so good. It's not 1-to-1. Democrat abuses of power and Republican abuses of power are not the same. And it's not the same also that like as soon as anyone abuses power, it's like bad in the same way. Like no, because like we're not assholes. We're not doing the same thing. We're not like just arresting and harassing innocent people because of their skin color. Like we would just go after like CEOs, we would just like pass things that are good for people, like student loan forgiveness, stuff like that. Like these are not created equal. But so Republicans are like rightfully terrified of letting this happen. So we offer that's path A. We just do it, and then you roll the dice that people watch us do this for years, and then they'll somehow still let you have the power to do it. Do it back. Like they know they'll just lose that popularity contest. Or option B, you sign on to this bill with us to just ban this outright. And then it'll be bipartisan and it will pass through easily and immediately. And then Republicans are just going to choose that every time. They're just going to sign on and then you ban this, right? So what you do is you basically have Super President Gavin Newsom just threaten this. Just threaten to do what they do. And then in the same breath, you offer them a way out by just banning this possibility outright for everyone. That's the way. Not just say, we're not going to do it. Not just a verbal promise that we're not going to do it this time. That leaves this possibility open. But just, here's like a bill that will just change the rules so no one can do this. Like the current best example of this, that they didn't talk about in that discussion, of what is the like maximum possible ridiculous use of power, would be the president can do anything legally that is in their official capacity, which is ill-defined. So let's give Super President Gavin Newsom a katana. And he can do whatever the hell he wants with it. That's the maximum extent of it. That's the maximum extent of like this green zone. Right? Where it's not like, I mean, it's technically illegal. It's not cool. No one's ever thought about this before, but it's still technically there. That's what this is, like just Gavin Newsom with a sword. And like you could just let him go around and he could just kill whoever he wants to kill. That's it's inappropriate, it's ungentlemanly, it's technically allowed. Let Super President Gavin Newsom do that, and we'll see what happens. Because I bet you real quick, a bipartisan effort in Congress could say, actually, we're going to change the rules so that Supreme Court interpretation no longer applies. And that's what you do. So I'm not saying be corrupt also. It's not this petty thing. It's like, no, this is the only way you bring them to the table. It's literally the only way you bring them to the table, and it will work because it has worked. Because right now, they're terrified of overturning the filibuster. What I think should happen, if Democrats have a blowout and do in fact win the Senate, as well as the House of Representatives in 2026, abolish the filibuster. They could just do it. They could get rid of the filibuster, which is just a Senate rule, which means they don't have to meet the threshold of actually overcoming a filibuster, I'm pretty sure. They could just do what everyone's afraid to, because they're worried about what the other side will do. Yeah, Biden had to get Republican support. He was a very effective president. That's true, yeah. And like there are ways to like do bipartisanship negotiations on things, and this is one of them. Because Democrats are good people, we can say, yeah, we should ban these like possibility cases for abuses of power, and then create a need for Republicans to do that as well, and then they could sign on to it, and it would be so easy to cross the vote threshold. It would be so easy. Yeah, like the filibuster is just like a bad regressive rule. It's not good. Currently, I don't generally want to abolish filibuster because it's on Republicans now, and I want to minimize the harm they can do. I will flip-flop on that as soon as they lose power. And if that's partisan or petty, I don't care. Because I think if Democrats gain control of Congress, especially also the presidency, and then abolish filibuster and just run and don't care about public opinion on the news, which will be bad faith anyway, and just pass like, we're gonna build a ton of housing, we're gonna like do universal health care, anything and everything you could think of. Just go and do it for a year, like just like that Death Note montage, pass like 100 different bills and 100 different things. People can freak out about it in the moment because like, oh gee, they're just doing all this stuff. Wait a year, and then like people's quality of life will meaningfully change, and they'll start to see results. If you want to restore like trust and faith in government, you need to connect that like actions into like consequences. But like we don't see that because it gets all fuzzy and vague, and Biden failed to message on this. Yeah, like there is a moral thing. Yeah, like so it's just the game theory of it. It's just game theory, and like everyone on the panel kept saying like, oh, but what if, and then like coming up with excuses to hesitate and hedge. And like this is, by the way, anything that's in this green range, I would call lenient. We brought up the example of jaywalking. Another is like drugs. Here's like a very realistic one. What do you do if you are in a state where smoking a certain herb is illegal, and you know someone who's like in high school or college or about to go to college who smoked? That is technically illegal. Turning them in could ruin their life, could ruin their educational future. But they'd be doing it in their house. They're not hurting anyone. There was no like externality. It might have even only been the once. So there's no significant consequence to their own health. No harm to anyone else. But like someone who technically broke a law. Would you turn them in? I would think to not turn them in is technically lenient, because you have a right to turn them in. Like you could. But I would argue like it's a nice thing. It's like a morally defensible thing to do. Like I would still say that's lenient. What I think Hutch was doing in the conversation was like defining them like, he's like, oh, I don't want to like go lenient on them. I want to just prosecute everything that's like moral and right to like criminally, right? And to like do more would be corruption. And like the problem was like how he defines like lenient, like fair / moral / reasonable, and then like corrupt, were all just like subjective personal moral definitions of these words, and not actually like technically possible, right? Because for him it's just like anything that he felt sorry, I have a lung disease. Anything that he felt was reasonable and moral, which I think we might even agree on like what is considered like the reasonable like moral kind of thing to do, would be like within like this top realm, right? But then like he had a very subjective definition on what he considered to be lenient and what he considered to be corrupt. They were self-defined, and that's cool. You can do that because it sounds nice, but like it's not actually a technical operant definition that other people have access to, and that's why that conversation got nowhere, and they all started spinning their wheels, and I got like frustrated and wanted to hop in, right? Because they would make arguments like, but what if, and it's like those are justifications for there's something you could technically do that you don't want to do, and that's what I would call lenient, not like some personal, subjective moral emotional thing. And then, like, that's what people think, though. People think, like, starting with moral decisions and then find philosophical frameworks after the fact. I'm just using technical language because I think that's, like, makes more sense. So, yeah, that's like, my, like, logic for that. Like, game theory-wise, you need to just ban this outright. No appeal to, like, but we're reasonable, follow our steps, is ever going to work. And it's not about, like, punishing these people in power. Because other people could do it and inevitably will do it. And that will always be the case. As long as you allow some possibility for, like, abuse of power that's technically possible, some young Republican will try to do it. So you just got to ban it outright. And the only way you can get them to agree to ban it outright is threaten for Democrats to do it. Any band of, like, good faith versus what's possible, that differential will be abused. And the only thing that's not to believe in, like, we got to return to, like, bipartisan, good faith government and get on the same page. They're never coming. They're just not. They're not going to agree with you. because they have a different moral value system. They see it's moral to win, to achieve their goals. They don't believe in the system itself. So you just need to outlaw the possibility space of things that are like bad faith but technically possible. Like, you can't get them to agree that it's bad faith. Because like, they know it's bad faith. They just don't care. They see a different moral imperative. Leftists do something similar. Leftists also have like this goal, like this axiomatic capitalism bad, America bad, and will like any means justifies that end. Like harassing someone, lying about your beliefs based on the context are all means to achieve that end. Yeah, I mean, you're scared of Democrats going hard on Republicans and the average person recoiling from Democrats. That's definitely possible, but at this point, there's enough like ill will towards Republicans built up, and basically, like, here's been my point: Democrats need to earn trust to do anything or maintain long power, and that's why Republicans have done everything in their power to prevent Democrats from possibly building that trust. Democrats can build that trust by and only by tying their words to actions that actually get to happen, to actual consequences that actually get to happen because of their consequences. When we see that, like, to vote for a Democrat means something and actually does something, we see a return on that, as promised, that builds trust, just in results. Just in results. And then even if people have, like, farther left views, you know, like, oh, Democrats aren't doing enough, but, like, they'll be able to concede, and it would be easier to argue, but Democrats do something, you can see it. Like, it will take basically a flood the zone storm of legislation. And the other reason I think this is good to just flood the zone and like threaten to and even do and like, you know, but offer to regulate every possibility that's like out of the norm once you have power and pull every lever at the same time to the maximum effect, is while I said it was a downside that Republicans can have their negative media news source that 24/7 will malign anything you say or do. They have 24 hours a day to do that. That is also a cap. And they can only talk about one thing at a time. Especially with like their extended propaganda network that streamlines through social media influencers and politicians all tweeting the same thing. And all the bots they hire. They can only post one thing at a time. Like, they can't stay on message if they have to message on 5 different things at once. It lessens the impact. So what you do is you have basically this like blitzkrieg approach where you abolish the filibuster, and then you just have like even just like a month of we are going to pass every different kind of bill on every issue we've ever thought of, like our dream list, all at once, while also like we're going to prosecute every single person we can think of for every possible reason all at once. And those prosecutions and trials, by the way, are not sexy. They're not flashy. No one's of shedding a tear for Republicans who are being like prosecuted in a legal trial. They're too boring. They're too closed. They're too slow. They're too involved in evidence based, and it just comes off as whiny sore losers. They're going to do that anyway. But like, no one cares about the details. No one cared about Roger Stone. No one cared about Giuliani. Both of them, by the way, are like players off the board now. You do it all at once. So the Republican media, even though they want to just complain about whatever you do, now has to choose. Do they want to complain about a witch hunt and being prosecuted and play victim? Or do they want to complain about this bill you're passing on healthcare and how much that'll cost? You know, even though it saves money, like a lot of money. They're stupid. Even though they want to complain about like funding schools because it costs money or whatever, and even though it's a good thing to do. Like they have to pick and choose. If you do, here's all the good things we're doing and here's all the prosecutions we're doing all at once, there's too many threats. That's like the reverse flood the zone. It's not flooding a zone with made up virtue signal headlines. It's flooding the zone with like, we're all just going to shut up, keep our heads down and act and go, 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 go. Coming from like the gaming and design industry as well. We've seen this here too. A lot, actually. Some famous examples. There's 2 really famous examples in gaming, right? Where how do you start like with as low a reputation as the Democratic Party does? No Man's Sky was it's a space open world simulator exploration game. It promised a massive generative open world, bigger than like anything you've ever seen before. And you could just explore, look around a planet. It seems super cool. So there was like a huge promise, like this idealistic vision for like the future, and like you could play what you do. This would be awesome. When it came out, it was so shallow and lacking in features that they cut corners for time that realistically, under that budget, under those time constraints, they could not deliver on everything they promised. So then, like, it had really bad image, right? This is what the Democratic Party goes through all the time. They have big promises and even good ideas. They can't deliver all them given the realistic constraints of the opposition party, in their case. And so then, like, the result is unsatisfying. No Man's Sky now is still going strong with a deeply loyal player base. Because what they did, the response that actually worked, was they told their team, like, this was a strategy from the leader. The leader said, I'm just going to take some shit for this, but we're going to shut up. Maybe leave out, like, one apology, but we're not just going to comment on this and react to this and, like, make excuses the entire time. It's going to look cringe. It's going to backfire every single time. They kept their heads down, and they just started developing. They released, like, DLC after DLC after DLC, filling not only everything they promised before, but new cool ideas. And just doing that. And eventually, just through the raw power of seeing results, any arguments against them lost ground, lost footing. Because it's so hard to argue against that, because it's something more concrete. Like, actions are more concrete than words. Results are more concrete than actions. And you just do that. Like, and then over time, like a few years later, like, wow. You know, like, you just, everyone kind of came around and got on board. And that now, there's actually, like, some argument, like, to be made. That's not just, well, they didn't have they weren't able to do it in the time and money constraints they had. That's true, but that feels unsatisfying when they never delivered anything. Now that they have delivered it, it just took more time and money. Now it's like, okay, they couldn't do it under the time and money constraints they had, but when we give them more time and money, they can do it. So the same applies politically. Like, the Democrats, they can't do it when they only have one term of power and a bunch of opposition. But when we give them power and time and opportunity, they use it for good. That's teaching a lesson. There's retention to that idea. And that's just what we need to see more of. So that's why, yeah, like, use every possible power, pull every lever. Don't just, like, hold back on doing anything and making excuses. People want to see results, and you can start to rebuild that trust through actual results. The Biden administration almost had this with their bipartisan infrastructure bill. Where they failed was a clear centralized voice on media, because Biden, his stutter was getting too bad with stress and old age and media attacks, which made it worse, especially on his son. He was, like, starting to, like, he couldn't speak as clearly. He was locking up more and more and more to be that clear voice. But, like, the bills they passed on infrastructure were good. So what they should have done is been like, hey, we did this sort of term as bipartisan agreement. Spend the rest of the term with periodic updates, like a fireside chat format or something. Hey, remember that bill we passed? We've filled this many potholes nationwide, and put up big signs with it. Like, we did this. This is because of this. And that bill was so good that those projects, a lot of them are still ongoing. Some are canceled. Some are still ongoing. And what I've seen in cities and stuff, like in Philly, there was a couple of projects that were funded by that bill. Donald Trump got in office and he put up signs with his name on them next to the bill, like the bridges being built and stuff. So people thought, oh, Donald Trump did this. Like, they're tying that to the actual result they could see. That's the problem. They never took credit. Like, Democrats never took credit for the things they did. If you want to build that, like, you need to say, hey, we're going to do a bunch of stuff. And people can complain about it, but then you just do it, and you don't let people get in your head and psych you out about it or hesitate or worry, like, but what if they do stuff in the future? You know, just put your head down and do it. Report on your results. Show your results. Have results. And then tie that together. Tie that thread together. That's how you build that trust. It's just that, like, connect those dots for people as directly and in your face as you can. Yeah, and, like, Republicans just keep taking credit for Democratic things. Even with, like, Iran and, like, the nuclear deal. What Republicans now on Twitter are saying is, like, we just want this fair, like, limitations on Iran. And they list their demands, and it's literally just, like, the deal that Obama had. But no one knew that. No one knew that. Here's our idea. Here's our implementation. Here's why it's good and why. You're welcome. We did this. So, yeah, I don't think there's any value. Like, Republicans are just bad faith actors. Don't allow bad faith space. Get results yourself and prove it. And that's how you make a good faith, like, contention of that idea. I'll see if I can clip that into a video later, because that's my big rant, but I think it's important. What next? Oh yeah. Okay. There's one more thing I want to talk about. So a ha. We got this up. A YouTuber, NotSoErudite, is a liberal, progressive content creator. I met her. She's a nice, cool person. She recently went on the Tim Pool podcast. Tim Pool is a known asset of Russia. He was taking money affiliated with the Russian state media and then played dumb about it. But he wasn't too dumb to cash those checks. Wonder why they were paying him those checks. Interesting. So NotSoErudite went on Tim Pool's podcast to like be, a liberal and talk with him a bit. I've heard mixed things about this. And my girlfriend told me to be like a better content creator in this sort of space. I should look at stuff like this and review it and see the arguments. So we're gonna watch that and then talk about it. First, at a baseline, I'm not sure how good an idea it is to go on Tim Pool's podcast. I'm leaning against it being a good idea because Tim Pool, as discussed, is a known bad faith actor paid by foreign interests because the work he does is, known to undermine American interests. That's pretty straightforward. Russia is an enemy of the United States. A lot of people forget that. Russia is a shithole country. So we're gonna watch this. We're gonna see how it goes. I know Erudite is like kind of bold. Like she handles stuff pretty well usually. It's in kind of this sort of territory. But I've heard mixed things about this. We'll see. I don't know. I have not seen it yet. My girlfriend told me to watch this on stream and talk about it. So we're gonna do that. And so I want to keep that in mind of like, what is this territory like she's in? What are the objectives here? What are the goals? What's the room to gain and what's to lose? First, I'm just gonna call like a general high level thing. How podcasts and systems like this usually work is they are bad faith creators. Like obviously they literally get paid to do that by like right wing interests to undermine democracy and progressivism and steer young men away from education and into war and factory slave labor for the ultra wealthy pedo elites. So how these podcast systems usually work, whether like they know it intentionally or they just happen to be useful idiots, they are so maligned against the left. They will have on hand usually like hyper specific examples of like a random thing that's like bad, but no one else has even heard about. And it's not like controversial, but they'll be like, but what about this? And it's like either factually wrong or it's like there is no problem with that, but it's just there's no reason that would be like a weird news thing. And they'll take other people just not knowing about that because it's not like newsworthy or it's just weird. That's like hyper specific. And then they'll take you're not having a response to that as like, see, you don't even know, you're like manipulated. And you're not manipulated. So like that's one thing they do. They'll just like pull out random specific anecdotes or out of context information out of a hat that they have and have been provided with to just pull out as like bad faith hyper specifics. There's no good reason for anyone to know. The second thing they do is then when you say anything on the left, they will pull you into like weird esoteric nonsense on purpose just to try and confuse and get away from details that are like meaningful to them. And with both of those things, whether they're like trying to pull you away from your point into just like nonsense conversations that mean nothing of like usually over like weird definitions or philosophical concepts. I've taken philosophy classes. I love philosophy. These people are not actual philosophers. They usually misuse terms in ways that sound smart. You have a weird conversation about terms and ideas. And it's not because it's like actually meaningful conversation. It's like they're just asking weird questions you can't clearly answer because they're just kind of weird, stupid questions that don't make sense fundamentally as questions. So they'll have weird specifics about nonsense out of nowhere that you have no way of reasonably knowing. They will pull you away from your specifics into like esoterica. And with both of those paths, you need to step back and ask like, why? What is the point here? Like, honestly, why are we talking about this thing? What is the point? Because that's where the real conversation is. A lot of people are motivated emotionally or ideologically and we'll just like get into these other conversations as proxy wars, just to muddy the waters, and it's just exhausting. You don't get anywhere. And that's like how you unwind like a propagandist. Is like, why are you saying this thing? Let's contextualize this. What's the big picture? If you ask someone like why they support like fascists, they'll pull up some random nothing, like a news story about someone doing a crime who happens to be an immigrant, and then make some sweeping, not logically supported claim about all immigrants, and then use that as like an example for why they believe what they believe. That's not why they started to believe what they believe. That's after the fact. They're cherry picking and looking for trends where there's not trends, but they're picking data points, pretending they're trends to support something they already believe. But it's not addressing why they actually believe that in the first place. And so they'll trap everyone into engaging on those details way down the line. But they never start with that why they actually believe this and why we're actually here in the first place. And it usually gets at like they're capitalizing in themselves and in their viewers on like male loneliness and shit like that. Or just like a weird, they've never met a person who's different than them. They don't understand them. And they're making an excuse to never learn. So that's like with a high level of how these conversations operate. And I'm just calling that now because now we're going to watch this and see if we check those boxes.
Who you will be in that society. What are some of the principles you hope are there? Rule of law, right? And like fair treatment before justice would be one that we would all be for, because I don't ever want to be in the minority group that just gets treated poorly by the justice system because I happen to be in that minority group.
So how would you define society?
Yeah, like that.
The way that we usually do. A collection of people with like somewhat unified cultural values, probably bordered by a nation state that like unifies together.
That's a great definition. I would argue that by that definition, which I agree with, there's several distinct societies that exist within the United States, and each and every one of these societies is willing to use violence and lawfare against those who would threaten their moral worldview.
What does this have to do with the veil of ignorance?
So you're saying in a society, like, who would you want to be? What rules do you want? And I would say, yes, that works wonderfully in a collection of individuals with a shared moral worldview and probably a national border. But what happens when...
Conservatives get on this weird thing, too, about, like, the idea of a nation as, like, a cultural entity of a shared worldview. That's not how things work. Like, the culture, it's just not how things work in the modern day. What they're talking about is a friend group. And white supremacists like to get really reductionist in black and white and think there's this big kind of like us versus them, like ideological. They like to think everyone who looks like them thinks like them. And it's this like simple, safe, just get rid of the bad people. And there's so many good people. That's just not how it works. If you want people who agree with you and think like you, like that's a friend group. That's not really sustainable past like, what, 10 people? That's just fundamentally not how it works. If you want to actually be an adult and build a working government, it needs to presume eventually there will be someone you don't like or agree with on everything personally. And it's just this like baby mode way of thinking to not even work within that.
When that society is up against another society overlapping on its territories with a completely different worldview.
Well, this is part of how you can engage in the veil of ignorance, is going, well, I don't know who I am in this society, but how do I want that society theoretically to engage in foreign policy? Well, one of them, I would say, is I want my government to protect me as a citizen of whatever this nation state is, because I don't want other nation states coming in, stomping me and killing me and taking me.
This is more so like, an example that I'll use that's probably the least egregious would be open air fish markets in New York City. I think they're absolutely disgusting, and they shouldn't.
Okay, yeah, see, so already... he's pivoted wildly between like, how would you define a nation? The most nothing conversation topic, unrelated to anything, and then pivoted back once he got scared of that, back into a wild specific. New York open air fish markets. What?
Be allowed
because they smell.
It's not just that; it's the rotting fish and flesh that slops off
the street,
and it just it's all over the street.
With a hose,
and then it's just rotting for days. And when you go to the Lower East Side, it's just everywhere you go.
Go to Houston.
The people who live there, that's their society. They are largely Chinese and Southeast Asian. They don't care about
their society.
Open air fish markets, but the people of New York have started to move away because they don't like it, and this is crazy.
See, this is like a weird dog whistle thing. He's referred to people of Chinese ancestry living in one part of New York City as a different society than other people living in New York City. That's not what a society is. You know that instinctively. That does not require any definition specifically of society, because we don't work through definitions. We operate through prototype theory and exemplar theory, by the way, if you care at all about cognitive psychology. But it's just a weird presuming as like an established presumption that minority groups are like fundamentally different and other that is not at all substantiated. And these are the kinds of like premises that their broader nonsensical conclusions are built upon, and you need to call out every one of these false premises.
In an entrenched enclave. Enclaves are bad, and I believe
Entrenched enclave. Dog whistle. Call it out.
having a group of people that form their own subdivision that have their own rules is going.
Also, it's not substantiated that people are moving away from this area specifically because they don't like the smell of the fish market. All he says is he does not like the smell of the fish market, and he's extrapolated wildly from that, which is just his personal emotional opinion.
To create animosity and violence because you will create two distinct moral worldviews at odds with each other. Now, the reason I cite this example is because it's one of the least egregious, meaning the people of New York don't really care all that much about the open air fish markets. They just move away.
Yeah.
They stopped living in the area, more Chinese people moved in, and now the area is dominated by Chinese. But you could take a look at this and bring it to its most egregious, and that is
Even though the area is dominated by Chinese. Do you see that shortcut there? Like, dominated is like, is all motivated language. Dominated is weird. I don't know. It plays like a power thing. It's a scary word on purpose. And just Chinese. These are Chinese Americans. They're Americans.
like Chicago crime and shooting violence.
Sure.
Has he substantiated at any point why people move away from this area of town? If that's even happening. And how many of them? What percentage? And why does that matter? These are all the questions that she has not asked, and I'm a little disappointed in. But yeah, draw this out, interrupt them, call them out every single step of the way. Don't let them build a stack of any nonsense. Oh yeah, they freaked out about the PhD on racism and discussion of smells. Yeah, these people don't understand higher academia. Like, they cannot read a single study. They just can't. Before I would let any reactionary pretend to cite anything like this, I would sit down with them and read it with them and make them read it. And then tell me, like, walk through, like, I'm like a little teacher and they're in like 6th grade. What does this mean and why? And watch them bomb, because they will, because they don't understand what they're talking about.
So you have areas where there may be a middle-class black family, and gangbangers will come into that territory, or just young black men who are violent for whatever reason they may be, and they will create crime. This
Gangbangers. Interesting. That's a choice of words. These are the inconsistencies, these little like things that are like, they're framed as not themselves as like a standalone point, but they just slip into like a word or like part of a sentence, but he's throwing in additional extra points that need to be challenged. What is a gangbanger? Stop, define that, right? Because as soon as you say anything or I say anything, they'll stop and like, well, define this random word, just to like change the subject or like get away from that, right? Yeah, but like hold them to the same standard. And they can't do it. They can't do it. What is a gangbanger? Is that a technical term? Because that's very loaded. There's a lot implied there right away.
will cause the higher income people to flee and then just dramatically impoverish the area and create.
And then also saying like young violent black men for whatever reason they may be. But he's not like, why is he mentioning each of the traits? To what extent is youth relevant? To what extent is blackness relevant? This is like, why I would say this is racist. I don't just say this is racist and seem like a virtue signal thing, and then, you know, like make conservatives watching this or listening to this run away. But like, why is he bringing that up? Right? Because like I could just be talking about like crime rates. It's like, oh yeah, no, like a lot of green-eyed people are dying from COVID. Like what? Why is that relevant? Is that like causal? Because that's the implication there. And that, it's just these little slippery, like he's throwing in lots of assumptions into the pot and then just getting away with all of them.
Create more crime and violence throughout the area. So then the argument we would make is, what rules do we want? Well, our principles would suggest that you are innocent until proven guilty, and you should not be searched or have objects seized without
Ads, I'm sorry. If you want there to not be ads, you can donate at she'srightshow.com so I can afford YouTube Premium. Alas, I needed to afford groceries. Counting or not counting gang violence. Look, say what you will about Charlie Kirk. Despite his best efforts, in the very end, he was not in fact a grifter. He died as he lived, downplaying the realities of gun violence.
Probable reason.
And probable cause. And so what happened in New York is they said, this neighborhood is where most of the shootings and violence happens, so this is where we're going to stop and frisk people. It also coincided with being a black neighborhood. The progressives then said, why are the majority of stop and frisks black? And the government, which these are Democrat-appointed police, said, that's just where the crime is. Then they said, no more stop and frisk, you need to stop because you're doing it to black people. So
the problem with that is that it's like a bad mapping on, right? And conservatives will be able to understand this correlation. If you say we're going to have like affirmative action, right? We're going to have a program that's going to give money or job opportunities to black people. Because like race is like a, there's reasons for it historically. Sort of maps on to like poverty. Not entirely though. There are poor white people and there are rich black people. That's an approximation. We could say, well, but this helps, right? And then like every single conservative, including like someone like Tim Pool, will say, oh, but that's not fair. They're like, look at all these exceptions to the rule. This is not like accurate. They think there's a better way to do that, right? Just based on like, say, if we were trying to help income inequality, they'll say help poor people, just poor people, right? And that would exclude rich black people and would include poor white people. And they would say that feels like a more accurate solution to the problem. So the problem with stop and frisk is it was targeting black neighborhoods. Yes, there was crime in those neighborhoods, but if you look at the stats, there were a lot of innocent black people being stopped and frisked. Or there were situations where it would just be the black people being targeted and not the white people as much, even when they both were in an area. And so it's like, it's not mapping on one-to-one. Like, this is not solving crime efficiently and effectively. It's not targeting onto that as well as like we could have better ideas. But this is giving black people who are just existing in their neighborhood a lot of trouble and could potentially, like if there is a racist cop that would escalate to abuse, like it's creating opportunities for that. And that's like the problem with it, right? Like it's not mapping onto criminals. And stop and frisk is like very violating. Like it's, if you're going to like airport security even, like it's, people don't like being touched. It's degrading. And also just being treated as like you might be a criminal is disrespectful. It's humiliating. Like there's a better way. There's a better way. So that's like the immediate challenge is trying to justify stop and frisk. Point that out. Like, is that, well, how efficiently was that targeting crime? Is there a more efficient way to target crime? What about the cases where it's targeting innocent people who are not criminals? That's not fair to them. Yeah, and like that's what we keep seeing. Like when it is actually studied, like stop and frisk does not seem, in fact, like it is accurately trying to reduce crime. It seems like it's allowing for like a lot of police officer bias, especially to like who they have a gut feeling about, happens to be racially biased. You could even reduce that, even if like you kept stop and frisk policies, by like paying for more like training for police to like seminars and stuff of like, hey, like, do you have an implicit bias? Here's like some ways to check yourself. I think like funding body cams is a good way to like fund police in a way that like can help you find and call out and like get rid of abusive cops. Like there are several other ways to treat this, but like this is not, he's just defaulting to stop and frisk good and not questioning how accurate is that really? How good is that really? What are the consequences of that? He's only looking at the factor that he thinks is good. And it's like shows a tremendous intentional, most likely, lack of curiosity into like, is this the best way we could be helping people? Or is this hurting innocent people? And the fact that he doesn't care about how this hurts innocent people who are black, who are complaining they're being hurt because they're black, that bias, like that margin that he's not caring about, shows like he's suddenly dropped like any actual like fair balance. Is this the best way we could tackle crime? Like that intellectual curiosity, that curiosity about stopping crime, like any passion for law and order. Instead of caring about that optimally, he's tilted by a racial bias. He's willing to excuse massive inefficiencies and problems in like how he's thinking about this is stopping crime when it's racist. Go further. Go further. do better. Like there's no willingness to do better, and that's just sad.
You have two distinct moral worldviews.
Sure.
You can't do this only to black people, but it's just the neighbor where the crime happens.
Yeah.
Your principles are meaningless in this regard because both groups are going to assert power over the other to make their world happen.
Well, this is where democracy can be beautiful or bad, right? And so
See, so this is a case for like it's just this reductionary. It's this or that, and then it just ends. There's no deeper curiosity. There's no deeper questioning. There could be a great conversation on like, even if stop and frisk helped like to a little extent, is there a better version? Is there a different solution to the same problem? But he doesn't care about finding the best solution to the problem. He cares about justifying stop and frisk because probably because of the same racial bias he also showed by writing off Chinese Americans as an area being dominated by Chinese and asserting they don't care about the smells of fish markets.
So what the thing you're posing, right? Say you say, I don't want to have enclaves in a society. And my counter to that would basically say, I think with the size of nation states, it's almost unavoidable. Even just think about the way that geography shapes a culture, right? If you've got a nation that's mountainous and full of pine trees, and it's also in a nation with beaches and fishing, and it's also in a nation with, insert different geographies, right? The people and the culture that are going to emerge from these, even just geographies alone, are probably going to have some of the different values. They're going to have things where they want to prioritize fishing industry more, but it's possible that the lumber industry is like having issues and they want more advocacy. And so they'll always have these competing interests. And I think the beauty of a democracy that's functioning well is that it takes two things where actually there might be reasonable concern, right?
Let me ask you a question.
Can I finish my thought and then I'll let you ask the
This is a
question?
long, long
Hey, you
point.
went for 5 minutes. I'll
Get
get
used to it,
2
bud.
minutes, okay?
You've been doing this to me for 5 years, T-Bone.
If you can sustain.
Okay, yeah, he ran away again. He ran away again. He changed the subject. He interrupted her. Even though he was making way more points, even in the same amount of time, he drops in lots of emotionally loaded words and assumptions and implications to like build up something, and then cuts her off before she makes a point. To be fair, also, like, she did not call out or interrupt him for anything. I mean, she should have, because he was making lots of points. She should have responded to each point as it was laid out, because he was building a narrative of building blocks that were themselves invalid. But also, like, her thing, she just ran away from the topic entirely. I don't know. It's bad. Hold him to his own stuff. Like, don't start your own work of building up your own mountain of, like, ideas and stuff. It's way more effort, and then it puts him on the ground to start challenging and tearing down everything you say, while his points get taken for granted. And that's just ceded ground.
Simply make the point.
Okay. The beauty of a dialectic of a democracy is you can take two opposing values, and what the idea is to find a compromise within both where ideally you find the best pieces
So
of
here's
each and
why
synthesize
I'm
them.
interrupting.
Yeah.
I feel like that is rudimentary, and we understand that completely. It's not the point that I'm making. So I'll give you a better example. Dearborn, Michigan has several instances of female genital mutilation among young girls.
Yeah.
That is explicit.
That needs a source. That needs a source. What he just said needs a source. He was a little right. I will think he's, be reasonable in this. He was right when he's like, yeah, that's not what I'm talking about. Like, that's, yeah. She said something entirely kind of unrelated there. I don't see how that helps the discussion. Maybe if she built something, but she needs to be way more succinct and prepared if she's going to go that direction. Because she did speak for a lot and tried to build something up. It was vague. It didn't, like, come to anything. So that's, like, she spent now all of her time not challenging any of the bad stuff he's built up. Like, he's, imagine they're both building things out of, like, Lego blocks, right? Like, he's built himself a whole little castle already. She started building something that whole time that did not come to anything. So that's, like, not meaningful progress, right? A lot of work went into it. A lot of time went into it. I don't believe exclusively in a Marxist theory of labor value. So that time spent, unfortunately, does not accumulate into any real worth. Now that's back to him. And she probably knows this, too. Like, that's fine. But now he's already making claims again without sources. I am unwilling to believe him at face value.
Explicitly illegal in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
But in that community, it happens because there's no law enforcement that will stop it.
Right.
You are not going...
What? I don't believe him. I just don't believe him on that. That's weird. That's a weird thing to say and to do. Also, if you want to know if someone's in good faith or bad faith or not, do you think that he consistently cares about stopping female genital mutilation? Like, that's a pretty feminist cause. Like, and this thing too, like, are people saying something in good faith or bad faith? Or like, are people biased or unbiased? do they hold these principles consistently? If someone says they care about law and order, but they only care about like arresting black people, I don't think they care about law and order. If someone is just only pretending to care about female genital mutilation in one case, but not like the treatment of women globally or even nationally, like in general, I don't think you're saying that for like a real reason you believe. And that's like the response to this is to pull up other examples of female genital mutilation or other mistreatment of women. And be like, okay, well, why have you cared about this? Yeah, especially among like white men abusing women, and see if it brings the same level of care and concern. Because the implication here by him just pulling a random specific example out of a hat that may or may not even be true or sourced is that like she or liberals in general don't care about this. And that's not true. Like not knowing about something is not the same as not caring about it. But I don't think he cares about stuff like this. Like do the same to him and see if he's also A, aware of, or B, can condemn similar instances of violence and abuse, especially against women. You know, like, and that's how you like level that out.
To get a white cop to go into a Muslim community and say, stop doing this, because they'll say it's our community. In fact, they even have their own de facto versions of police.
And they likely won't report it either. That's probably part of the issue
So
too.
what is the solution then? Should the overarching government dispatch some white people who are non-Muslims to take over their government, to force them at gunpoint to stop?
Yeah, I mean, this is the great federalist question, is to what extent.
Oh my God! Yeah, she's just talking about systems of government that does not get into the specific satisfying issue. The presumption he's put into his audience's head that he himself also probably holds, and he's probably making this up. But you know, even if he's not, like you could still engage with the hypothetical, right? Yeah, just say yes. That's something that you can see and be like, yes, they should, right? But that would seem like a concession, but that would be fair. But then to also say I want to be fair and principled about this, pull up another example. There are also cases of abuse of women, even in white communities. Do you care about those too? And showing that you know about those and care about those and can bring those up and assert those proves you're more principled on this than he is. There are huge problems with like human trafficking in the United States. If you go to like any like rest stop, like on a highway, like in the bathrooms, in women's bathrooms, there are like signs, you know, like phone numbers to call if you're like in danger, stuff like that. Did you know that under the radical Republican regime right now, in their big bad bill where they scrambled around everything in the budget, what they're funding and not funding, and how they're operating the FBI under Kash Patel, who's an unqualified piece of shit, they have like stopped a bunch of FBI investigations into things like stopping sex trafficking and stuff like that. Like they're just not funding. Like counterterrorism is also defunded. They're only like, they've moved all resources to like ICE stuff and immigration stuff. So if you actually care about like protecting women, you know, like nationally, like universally across the board, why aren't those problems being treated? Like that's the kind of direction to pull us into. And be like, yeah, we should do more. But he's already implied, without even having to say it, like the narrative is that like Democrats are going nice on Muslims. Another great example to pull up is just like all religions, all religious extremism around the world of any religion leads to a lot of abuse, like sexual abuse, especially of women, especially of minors, especially. And it's weird when people like this only call out Muslims. It's totally valid. Also, anyone on the left who does like try to like handle with kid gloves, because this does happen. It was very like 2010s. There were lots of like white women, especially, who would try to like baby Muslims or like other, usually just Muslims as a group, but like some other groups too. Of like, oh, it's just their culture. No, call it out, but call out all extremism, call it all abuse. Like it's not acceptable to do this. Like fuck the Middle East. You know, like I can say in the same breath also, but it takes like a higher IQ to like manage different ideas at once and not just like a binary good bad. I can say, for example, lots of leftists care about Palestine, right? Free Palestine, sure. I think Israel is conducting itself poorly. Israel has it's just illegally done a lot of war crimes and hurt and killed and oppressed a lot of civilians in Palestine. Also, those people in Palestine, horribly homophobic, horribly sexist. Like you can do both. You can, like it's condemn across the board. But yeah, Erudite is kind of letting him slide.
should
Now
be
that's a violation of the principles of the locals who voted that in.
true, but it might be for superseding like cultural values that we value more. This is the constant tension that happens with the federalism, like, you know, Amendment number 10. Go ahead, sorry.
So I'm going to say a few things. First of all is, thank you. You're not stating Rawls's full argument, where for the argument that Rawls gave, you could also apply that to Aristotle, because Aristotle was saying, what is the abstract concept of good that we can use? And Aristotle said there's 3 different political systems which are useful under different contexts that have their own issues. Rawls is also operating under the principle of equality, which is demonstratively false. Equality has been continually disproven by the science, as well as there are genetic differences between populations. That's disproven among all of the academic community. And so when you're looking at the Rawls, he's automatically jumping to socialism is good because equality is good, and this is all operating under the assumption that Enlightenment morality is correct.
Rawls is incredibly critical of socialism. He rejected egalitarianism.
So it depends on your definition of socialism.
That's good. She did better. She knew the specific example that this random bullshit artist was bringing up. So that's good. She was able to call him out. But then notice how he just pivots and runs away again.
Incredibly critical of socialism. He rejected egalitarianism.
So it depends on your definition of socialism, because the
Yeah, they always retreat into definitions. People don't actually think in definitions. You just don't.
socialists play a game
Communism.
where there's multiple definitions of socialism used at any given time.
Sure.
So you can pick one or the other based on context.
Rawls was just
That's not true. Different people might use different definitions of socialism, but they're pretty consistent about which ones they use. Like, it's called an operant definition. That's how any word works. If you, like, even pay basic attention to, like, what leftists talk about and what they want versus, like, what these people think they're talking about. And this is why I think you need different words. And I just don't play these, like, language games anymore, because you just talk past each other the entire time. I think leftists miserably fail every time they try to, like, say that, like, oh, we need to just get everyone on board with talking about themselves like a Marxist-Leninist, or say they're against capitalism. It's theater. You're never going to get everyone on the same page or talking the same way or thinking the same way, especially when they're going up in conversations against, like, old boomer conservatives who, when they hear communism, they're thinking specifically of the corrupt totalitarian government of the USSR. When, like, the young teenage leftist is talking about, like, anarcho-communism, like, these are just, they could both say communism, but they mean different things by it. It is less work to just find a new word, or just talk about the specifics of what you actually mean, and less about fighting over words and definitions. It's too, like, this masquerades as a big, broad, ideological, philosophical discussion when it's really not. It's actually just, like, waffling into vague, abstract terminology because they're too afraid of actually talking about specifics and discussing and defending specifics where they stand. And this guy now is, like, complaining about communism, which is not at all what Erudite was doing. And now she's put in a spot where she has to, like, defend communism as an idea to a bad faith audience that in socialism and communism, who, like, they're thinking of one specific system and government example of that. She's not thinking that at all. The way to talk about this is say, like, look, let's not talk about big words and big ideas like that, because you're right, different people mean different things by it. Sidestep that conversation and just get back into specifics, like single issue topics, because this is worthless.
responding to the Marx
Rawls
idea
is a
of the
democratic
flattening of-
socialist,
yeah.
which is still a meaning of the word socialist.
Sure,
I
but
want to move on to the next big story, but I do want to just conclude by saying I completely agree with Kyla.
Thank
I
you.
think we should exert force over Muslims who refuse to adhere to our traditional
that is
values.
not my position
have
at
another-
all, but I would love to flesh it out with you. But sort of my
What do you
position.
mean?
It's like 50.
Yikes. This is, why is he targeting Muslims specifically? And even her just saying that's not my position at all, like, she's still not asserted herself or given a specific or a counter narrative. It's still just, like, ceded that to him.
I just conclude by saying I completely agree with Kyla.
Thank
I
you.
think we should exert force over Muslims who refuse to adhere to our traditional
That is
values.
not my position.
And the way to do that is to say, we should enforce fair rules for all. That's how you actually counter that in a way that does not make it specific or Islamophobic. Because, like, why is he obsessed with Muslims specifically? And that's the big question to call him out on. Like, why don't you care about other groups doing this? And then bring up examples of that.
all, but I would love to flesh it out with you. But sort of my
do you mean?
position. It's like 50% of my position.
Well, I think
And there's like so much really sexist, creepy religious extremism among like evangelical Christianity in the Deep South. There's like purity balls and child marriage. There are like several examples to go into that should hit on the same things he says are bad, but he's only bringing up examples of Muslims doing them specifically, and she's not bringing up any examples at all. So that keeps it on the terms Tim Pool wants to set of Muslims bad versus her talking about intellectual, high-level, abstract concepts about democracy. It's just never going to work, especially against in the context of a largely stupid audience that is really only going to care about they're only going to care about specific examples, because like thinking in broad ideological terms requires enough education and intellectual development to like be able to think at that high level. When people are really down in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, or people are really down on like IQ levels because of like lead poisoning and stuff, or like not going to school, or not being able to afford food and have nutrition, abstract principled thinking is just beyond. You can't do it. So he's getting specific. She's not engaging with specifics, which is better than trying to defend those specifics, but it's still not counteracting that. There's no satisfying answer to anyone who is predisposed to Tim Pool's position.
that, again, we're going to go on to the next.
Oh, I want to clarify their argument before we move on. This is good.
The point is, when there are people who enter our society who have a religious practice that is an affront to our moral worldview, we will.
He's just thrown in so many loaded terms. Our society, an affront to our moral worldview. What is he talking about? What is he talking about?
Exert force against them to make them stop.
Yes, to an extent.
The thing with
Well, of course, to an extent.
Yeah, that's why I said.
To an extent, it's not the. To an extent is the worst like battleground to pick there. What do you mean a moral affront to us? What? Just hey, look, enforce the law. Enforce the law. No matter what race you are, enforce the law. And if you're talking about enforcing the law, no matter your demographics, actually, it turns out white men are getting away with a lot more. Disproportionately. Lower sentences for the same crimes.
To an extent, not.
Because when he's keeping it in this realm of like moral affront, like morality is like this subjective personal thing that he can make his little pet issue and care and no one can challenge on. If you just take it like pull this into a boring, dry, enforce the law. What are the laws? It's like actually objective and definable, and he doesn't get to move that goalpost because it's not his like little magical pet. Like I don't know. She's doing under a lot of pressure. Like this is a scary, weird, creepy situation. She's surrounded by all these nonsense people, but notice like how often he's making weird linguistic attacks and pushes on all these different fronts, like principally to build assumptions and pull things in a specific direction and build a narrative. And when she does push back, she's not challenging him on like the relevant points.
No, but not to an extent. Like, we will use force up to whatever means or whatever amount of force necessary to get them to stop. So it's not to an extent. It's
Okay, and now we're talking about force. Why? She's now caused a subject change while ceding the ground on like this narrative about Muslim people. And I just don't subscribe to that narrative about Muslim people. And it's easy to say, like, a lot of like reactionary, right-leaning Muslim people do have horrible views on gay people, on women, and trans people. Like, absolutely. Yeah, like, I agree. I'll see that. But I also know a lot of Muslim people who are nice and normal, who are like nurses, who like work at a store, work with computers, and they're normal and they are kind, and they are trustworthy, and don't do those things. And I don't see what their religion has to do with this. And like the very good question to bring up is if this is like what he's calling out and doing, like why is he targeting Muslims specifically? Just ask, well, why is it about Muslims specifically? Is it okay when non-Muslims do it? In response to every single sentence, like, is it okay when non-Muslims do it? And then watch him stumble over himself and saying no, but then bring up examples where it is okay, and then ask why he's not proportioning his discussion time to anyone except Muslims.
It's literally up to.
No. She's saying we'll tolerate some of their religious beliefs.
Like I want religious freedom as well, right? And so this is like this is what I'm saying. There's this tension all the time between like individual rights of freedom of religion, but also state.
His problem is that he wants that right-wing dark money, and he's got to manufacture narratives using liberal targets who fall for coming on his show to do it.
Values of things like we don't mutilate
again,
children.
Sorry to interrupt, but we really do got to. I gotta stress
Tim is
one more
correct,
thing.
but continue.
I got to stress one more thing. This argument still only works so long as you maintain the monopoly on violence, and if
Like
you,
the state.
Yeah.
your
I'm just
moral
clarifying.
worldview, not the state. If you as
Yes,
a
the
society,
state, and it should be the state, because she has not actually made the arguments about enforcing laws. She has not contested his weird argument about enforcing a monopolistic moral worldview on everything, which is weird and never going to happen. Like, the broader implication he's been talking about is trying to separate people into different camps based on their moral systems, which doesn't work. It doesn't work, and it's nonsense. It means nothing. Like, that's a child's idea, and like you can't practically implement that either. So what is he talking about? How do you do that, right? Because even if like you did manage to isolate people based on their moral views, what happens if then those people like living in those separate towns have a kid, and their kid happens to like come up with a different idea or believe something different? Do you deport that kid? To where? Why? Like how? What are you doing? How does that work? Like it's just nonsense.
with a moral worldview have the monopoly.
But also, like, he keeps saying it's about, like, isolation or drawing lines on the basis of segregation on the basis of morality. But not only is it not measurable or enforceable, why is he then talking about race all the time? Why is he talking about fish markets? And the smell of fish markets? Is he implying that Chinese people moralize, think the smell of rotting fish is morally good? It's nonsense. But he's been allowed every single building block into building this whole castle of grotesque nonsense. He's a stupid man.
On violence, you can stop, say, female genital mutilation. Sure. But if there is a new cultural worldview that has emerged, a new moral worldview, let's call it left.
Hey, if he opposes female genital mutilation, is he in favor of interventionism globally? Is he in favor of programs like USAID, which can provide aid to different countries and also condition that aid? Say, for example, offer to lend support to an impoverished African nation if and only if they take steps to enforce their own laws and prosecute anyone who has committed female genital mutilation in like villages in their area. You know, like there are ways to enforce that if he actually cared about that issue. But I feel like he wouldn't, you know?
Leftist that tolerates and supports what Muslims are doing, they will take from you your monopoly on violence, and then you get to civil war.
So a lot of leftists get into this weird tension with like Islam because they're very pro freedom.
I don't want to have an argument about leftists and Islam. My point was,
oh my gosh, she just changes the subject, which cedes the ground to him, and yet at some point you have to confront him head on. Like, does he care about Muslims or female genital mutilation? And the way to do this is to just call out, like, you know, attack why he's substantiating and how he's substantiating his implied conclusion that Muslims are bad by talking about the specifics he mentioned and then applying them universally. And if he runs away from that, then it shows he's full of shit because he only cares about Muslims bad and he doesn't care about female genital mutilation, for example. Like, he would not pick that. You know, you just... I don't know. He's just been given a free pass on everything.
if you have a monopoly on violence, you can assert your authority. If there are two distinct factions with equal use of force, you get civil war.
I agree with that. The issue is, I guess I'm just correcting the leftist idea that they just want FGM. They don't just want FGM. In fact, they acknowledge
that's the point.
This tension you're outlining exists regardless of the party side that you're.
And this is just nonsense. I don't know. She's not taking him to task in any area that's mattered, which is unfortunate. It's hard in a conversation like this. Like, I don't blame her. This is a stressful environment. But everything he said is just like a network of like every single step is a failure or an exaggeration or manipulation. And he's built to this whole conclusion unfettered. It's just strange to me. And also this whole narrative that, like, I know these the conservative weirdos on podcasts like to push a lot because they're appealing to, like, young men who are scared and don't know different people than them. This narrative of, like, civil war and enclaves, it doesn't happen. Like, they're describing a video game level. Do you seriously believe there is any neighborhood in the U.S. where we lack the power to enforce the laws? Are you kidding? Like, even if that took some, like, extraordinary exception, like, it could be done. So this is all, like, a non-problem. And that's something that he should be asked about as well. It could be done. There's no case. Like, I'm not scared of any neighborhood. Yeah, like, especially on the level of civil war. That's just, like, impossible. For years, Tim Pool has obsessively been calling for civil war. It's pathetic. Like, that's some angle he tries to push. I don't know why. It's not happening. Leftists openly brag about wanting a revolution, and they have for years. And they're not even close to having a civil war. Maybe amongst their own, like, Discord servers, who knows?
You're pointing to.
My ultimate point as we move on, again, sorry, is that
Okay, his point is they move on. Yeah. He's laid his whole groundwork of Islamophobia and then drops it and leaves it. That is also, like, maybe a perspective blind spot as well. I understand, like, Erudite is outnumbered here. She is, like, stressed. She does not want to be caught in any topic or situation where she would, like, not have enough factual information to talk about it. And there could be greater consequences to that. But I do think there's a systemic bias in how a lot of, like, the loudest, most public, most visible voices on the left do trend towards, like, whiteness and, like, every sort of majority status, you know? Like, you typically have, like, straight white men. And it creates all these, like, perspective blind spots. And I do feel like she's maybe letting a lot of Islamophobia slide in ways other people might, even if it more personally affects them, might be more aware of and more willing to call out. Like, what you consider is worth standing on your ground and fighting for and what you let slide is, like, a personal value call that, you know, depends on a lot of stuff. And I don't know, I'm a little disappointed here. I'm also a white girl. Hi.
Principles only apply to the people who agree with you, and that is universal to all moral groups. End of story.
Sure. Yeah, we live in a society. True.
Yes, like you.
And this is a situation again where, like, he's asked it's sort of put forward, not even ask a question, but put forward a statement, a claim that's so, like, vague and buzzwordy. It could kind of mean anything and means nothing. So I get why she just concedes on this, but there is a more concrete message put forward by his earlier claims, which he has left unchallenged.
You might believe in the right to keep and bear arms, but you're not going to give an Islamic terrorist a gun and be like, you have a right to bear arms.
Sure, it's why I like the liberal principles where we said, well, we should have a couple of basic rules that we all apply to because other things we shouldn't impose on
So
other,
when
like
you
free
have
speech.
two distinct moral worldviews operating in one country, and I would say more than that, you are not going to abide them the same rights as you would someone of your society.
Sure, because I would say free speech is better than compelled or controlled speech, yeah.
Like I would say, if someone is an advocate for the destruction of my country, I will not defend their right to speak.
I
will not defend their right to keep and bear arms either. If a man comes to this country screaming Allahu Akbar and starts throwing bricks at cops, I'm not going to say he has a right to keep and bear arms. I'm going to say
but nobody
absolutely
thinks
not.
that he has a right for assault, right? That's already barred out. But he might have a right to talk about it.
The point I'm making is, if someone expresses...
Okay, yeah, and there it is. She's just asked, she's been asked a ton of questions by him where he's put forward these broad, sweeping, weird claims, any of which could be challenged, but all she's done is said sure and, like, moved on. And the problem is, like, she sees these as sloppy questions. There's not a lot there. It's, like, awkward. It's, like, I see the value in trying to just move on, but it's not just moving on. He is now capitalizing and cashing in points based on his earlier, more detailed Islamophobic rant that he's now trying to, like, justify. And it just looks weak. Someone who's an advocate for the destruction of my country, I will not permit them to speak. Ironic W take from Bull. It's all just slop. I don't know. Just, like, enforce the laws. And shouldn't we have data-driven laws? Like, that's another really great way to take this conversation, is to not say we should just back and forth argue about, like, weird moral systems. It's like, okay, well then how should we create rules that make sense and apply to everyone? Because Tim Pool is stuck in this, like, advocating for weird tribalistic moral, religious, racialized worldviews. And the way to get out of that is like, okay, let's have some modern data driven. Why don't we start with like the facts? Instead of just talking past each other with like, moral opinions and cede to this nonsense, like postmodernist, emotional, anti-intellectual, systemic anti-realism, epistemic anti-realism slop that the right loves doing these days. This is where you actually should be making the argument for like a very kind of liberal modernist approach, like data-driven stuff. We should take action on like gun safety because of violent crime rates, and we know that like regulation helps. Stuff like that. Like that's where you, okay, how do we create sane laws where that doesn't happen and it's not just agree to disagree who is the most people and who can like win a monopoly on force? Because that's like the savage barbarism of a libertarian worldview, is it always just defaults to that. Anyways, I've talked about this for a while. We got through like 10 minutes of this. I assume it's just more of the same. But yeah, so we've sorry, it takes a long time to kind of stop and talk about all this. I know this is messy and rambly, but I'm gonna go to dinner. So thank you all for watching. I'm gonna stop the video now. If you like this video and you want to support me and you want more, you can go to cheeseriteshow.com and I will make more videos and stuff, and I stream most weekday evenings. Bye. So that was that. It's gonna be a frustrating repetition of the same pattern anyway, I assume. So I don't like platform this weirdo too much. But good job, Erudite. Like she didn't like totally crack under pressure. But yeah, he was really just like allowed to get away with like building this like framework of Islamophobia, and then just like making bizarre appeals for like we should just have 2 caveman tribes, each with like their own weird ass shaman. It doesn't make sense. Like this is a 5-year-old's crayon drawings view of government. He's a pathetic man. And once again, a known Russian asset. There was a huge scandal where a bunch of far-right radical creators were revealed to be taking money from Russian state-affiliated media, like laundered through sources. And he was one of them. He was one of the names that was outed. And then he played dumb. But he wasn't too dumb to cash the checks. And he didn't change his deal. So you wonder why, if they paid him because they liked what he's doing, or he did it because they paid him. But he's been doing the same thing now that he was then. Worth considering. Bye, everyone.